Is it going okay? Great, okay. I should have said, I think, just that last bit, talking about freedom, that of course you still have to have laws, but in a true democracy, those laws would be necessary in order to prevent others from hurting, harming, or disrupting the lives of other people. Still, those sort of fundamental laws have to be there. So in talking about bureaucracies and their dangers, please understand I wasn't saying that we can do away with laws as well, which I'm sure you realise, but I thought I'd better mention it. Right, so we go on, Bill. Where do we start?
Page 4.
Good. Off we go.
Democracy and peace. These cannot be realized in an instant. The way that they are realized is that the flame of the human spirit is transmitted from 1 to 10 to 1,000 people far and wide. Who then is the first person? Who will become this first person? Herein we find the great significance of what we have for long been advocating. That is to say, a great human revolution occurring even in one individual. I sincerely wish you all to polish your lives so that you can be individuals who have a solid personality in this age of the individual personality, and thereby create the age of democracy.
Good, thank you. So I think on this point we have a great advantage now in this country because we, as we always have been, are a multiracial people. So as such, we can polish our lives and our human revolution, and particularly in this sense of tolerating the differences in others by unifying ourselves as a people through challenging whatever criticisms we may have at the moment about the differences. So as recently we've had a edition of the UK Express, which those of you who had time to read it know that it refers to this whole matter of the new British in a new Britain. We've always been a cocktail, as I think I said in that editorial. Celts, Romans, and Picts and Scots, and I put some others down here. Saxons, Vikings, Normans, Jews, Huguenots, goodness knows what. But as I think I also said, the cocktail's been getting a bit stale. Time it was refreshed. So one of the great happenings in this country of ours, people will take time to realize it, but I'm sure it's true, is that we've been able to mix a new cocktail with the arrival of all sorts of other people from other parts of the world, India, Pakistan, West Indies, China, and so on. This is an incredible thing. To have that good fortune, that injection, if you like, of fresh blood, fresh ways of thinking, fresh experiences of life from fresh cultures compared to our own. And I'm quite convinced in the future that we shall really be thankful, those who are thinking straight enough, we shall really be thankful for that injection. We have the whole world, in a sense, with us in our country. It's also interesting, of course, that the Commonwealth still exists. It's still a valuable organization. It still helps to unify human beings from different parts of the world. We got a great start here. A very big start compared with even, for example, Japan, where the Japanese, through 250 years nearly of isolation, are still very inward-looking from a racial point of view. But we've got it all. We can create here in this country the proof that people of the world can get together, can live on a totally equal basis, tolerating each other's differences, and seeing the good points and using them to create a better world. This is the most wonderful thing. And I just hope that more and more people understand it. Fortunately, NSUK exists, and in NSUK, I believe this is part of the human revolution we all do, to respect each other, believe in each other as human beings. So also, as you know, we're planning this University of Life. And it's been a very interesting process, this planning. When you plan things, it seems in this Buddhism, when everyone's chanting Daimoku, you seem to go round in a circle until you find the most simple way. And I think that's what has happened. So this University of Life, of course, will be the whole of NSUK. In a way, we're starting the University of Life today with this guidance from Sensei, to look at the world and all its aspects from the viewpoint of Buddhism. So the University of Life will function so simply in that about once every 3 months, starting, I hope, from the spring next year, the UK Express will publish an article on a particular aspect of world or human problems. This will have been very, very carefully researched over a period of at least 3 months by a team who will then, together with a writer, produce the article. And then we shall discuss this particular article at our discussion meetings once every 3 months. So I think most incredible discussions will come. I think this will be like a breath of fresh air into the discussion meeting. And it'll work well because the UK Express comes out towards the end of the previous month to that issue. So the April issue will come out towards the end of March, and the discussion meeting for April will be towards the end of April. So in that way, people will have had time to read it, think about it, chant about it, I hope, and a lively discussion should follow. So this is the way I visualize this University of Life working. And I really think in that way we can develop within each other the habit of looking at all these problems not on the surface of life, but from the Buddhist point of view. I really hope so anyway, and I think it'll be very exciting. What do you think? Good. So up to now, in this guidance, we've been going through what's called preparation. All Buddhist teachings, as you may know, follow the sequence of preparation, revelation, and transmission. So up to now, it's all been preparation. Sensei preparing us, getting our thoughts moving in the right direction. Now we go on to the revelation. Thank you, Bill.
For Whitman, human beings are the only things that are sacred. He never acknowledged any authority that was divorced from ordinary human beings. He even stated that the ultimate purpose of the universe itself is to create great and splendid human beings. It was his belief, therefore, that the most important thing is to create great human beings before anything else. By doing so, the greatness of everything else would be a certainty. Thus, he defined democracy as the training ground of life through which people can develop themselves into true human beings.
Right. The most important line there, I'm sure you've already grasped it. It is belief, therefore, that the most important thing is to create great human beings before anything else. By doing so, the greatness of everything else would be a certainty. We're aware, aren't we now, that human beings can destroy the world. They can destroy nature. They can destroy the purity of the air. They can destroy each other, and so on. Because human beings have this right of choice between good and evil. The way Gicho Yamazaki put it when he was lecturing on this matter was that human beings are both sacred and dirty, he said. Well, it's one way of looking at it, and it's true. We're two-faced, evil or good, isn't it? Value or anti-value. This is the way of human beings. Therefore, if human beings choose good, which is what the aim of the great true democracy should be, to bring up people who think in the right way, who desire to do good because they can see that they have a purpose in life and a mission in this world, then, of course, the impulse will be to try to follow a path which is good. So we can be either the seat of the three poisons, but also we're the seat of Buddhahood. Or the other great example, of course, is the lotus flower growing in a stinking, horrible swamp. So how to turn it into the lotus flower, I don't know any other way than Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. But of course, that is not to say that other, what are known as higher religions, can have some effect. Definitely. Or certainly a person who learns and understands one single of the great Buddhist principles, it can change their way of thinking. If someone understands just cause and effect, it can make a difference to their lives for the better. Or the inseparability of ourselves and our environment. Or the supreme dignity of life, or almost anything else you think of. It can be of value to that person's life. So, of course, in view of this, going out within our own environment and sowing the seeds of Buddhism everywhere we go in these coming years is of particular importance, whether or not someone practices. To know about this Buddhism, to sow a seed of curiosity even, is valuable. This, really, we have to do this, to sow seeds wherever we go. And if we find it difficult to sow seeds, then we chant Daimoku, to cross the path of people who we can talk to. And we chant Daimoku for that wisdom, to be able to speak about it. We shouldn't neglect it. This determination to sow seeds is very important, obviously, isn't it, in the development and spread of the influence of Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism and his philosophy of life on people everywhere. Each of us standing on our own, in our own particular environment, sending the ripples outwards. The very crucial matter, especially entering this era of great change. And of course, the fact that we practice causes us, in some extraordinary way, to attract people. People, though we may not realize it at all ourselves, people feel something about our lives because we are activating the Causton within us, the Buddhahood within us. And therefore, they will come to us, or they will watch us and see what we do, So in that respect, we really do have to stand like rocks, as I said yesterday, in these turbulent times ahead. And people will come to us. We will be able to give them encouragement and confidence. Most of all, of course, if we can give them the practice, that will be the greatest triumph. So as Whitman and Sensei both say, it's human beings who can make or break the world, isn't it? The greatness of everything else will be a certainty if human beings get it right in their own hearts. Right, Bill?
Without freedom, great people cannot display their true capability on the stage of life. But what is it that is important to understand about freedom? It is whether you use freedom for your development or allow it to corrupt you.
How about that? What a vital choice this is, isn't it? Mr. Gorbachev's great worry, if you remember, in the dialogue, which I hope most of you have read and heard about, between him and Sensei in Moscow the other day. He said then his great worry was that when you give freedom to people who have been long oppressed, they simply don't know how to handle it. And this is really, we can see this happening now. It's very difficult to visualize what it must be like to be oppressed throughout your whole lifetime. And then suddenly everything's free. People groping around, not knowing how to deal with it. So there, of course, the help of those who have been free is very important. The distortions of freedom, however, in a democracy are very obvious. You only have to read your newspapers, I'm sure, to see that. People using their freedom in this country, for example, to try to put their prejudice upon others, trying to put their prejudices in order to chain other people to a way which is not free. I hate this particular party, or I can't stand that lot. People who, in their fanaticism concerning the use of animals for experiments, go out and put bombs under other people's, scientists' cars. Nothing more disgusting, is it? But there are less extreme things than that. You even find some vegetarians who can't stand to sit next to a human being who eats meat. You know, where are we going to? But this is an illicit use of freedom, isn't it? They are free to say what they like, but if that freedom is used to detest and criticize or even attack people who don't do things the way you feel they should be done, it no longer is a freedom, is it? And unfortunately, we see a great deal of it going on today. So this again is a trend that has to change, and I'm sure it's a trend that will arise very much in those countries that have been oppressed for 40 or 50 years. People haven't been able to express their opinions, so those who bear hate in their hearts, or anger, the three poisons, if you like, are very likely to stand up and try to impose their will on others. I think this is a terrible thing. It exists at the moment, and is all more reason for us spreading the message of the human revolution. Okay?
Today, the current of democracy has started to flow throughout the world. this direction of history will not be altered drastically, even though, at times, small adverse currents may appear.
Well, certainly an adverse current did appear, as we said earlier, 1 or 2 days after Sensei gave this guidance. Someone said it was, I can't remember myself, either the 3rd or the 4th of August that Iraq attacked Kuwait. So, do we look upon it as a small adverse current? I think so. I think so. I don't think it will develop into a major adverse current. I don't know why I say that, but I have a sort of feeling of hope, don't you? Somehow I think it'll be contained. Jaw, right. Instead of war. Good. So, anyway, the burning house can't expect to be no longer burning. This is the way the Lotus Sutra, it's incredible really, isn't it, 3,000 years ago, described this age of Mappa, that the world will be like a burning house. But certainly there are embers still red hot, and the slightest situation can set some corner of this house burning again. But I really feel probably that we've seen the biggest conflagrations. I don't think that we shall see anything like that again. But we've got to be very, very careful if we're going to avoid those red-hot embers being fanned. All right, Phil?
Mankind has now woken up to the fact that human beings are at the heart of everything, and therefore the first consideration must always be to human beings. It's very important, therefore, to know what the final key is to establishing a true democracy and the reformation of society. In the end, I believe it totally depends on whether we can develop great democratic characters and thereby become great democratic human beings. The same principle applies to the future of the movement for Causton Rufus.
So in a way, I think here Sensei is summing up what we've also been considering. That in a way, the movement for Causton Rufus is an essential center point in terms of influence in the world, and will become so more and more to an increasing degree. Because it is from that the human revolution in individuals, that the spark of this democratic spirit, or the flame, can be passed on from one person to another. Definitely. It's difficult to believe that we're still such a small group, that we could have such influence. But each one of the more or less now 5,000 of us is in their own environment. Each one of them, in 1 week, by some action, could influence the lives of 10 other people, maybe more. This is the way of Causton Rufus. But of course that is only if we are clear in our minds about what we're trying to do. We're trying, aren't we? This guidance is stating it all. We're trying through the Buddhist philosophy of life, which Nichiren Daishonin taught, to spread an understanding of the way human beings can create a great and true democracy in the future, how they can change those, the dirty side of their lives, if they wish to do so. So really, we live in amazing times. I can't imagine, what we're going to see in this world in the next 20, 30, 40 years. I shan't last all that time. But I'm sure, I'm sure it's going to be an amazingly exciting period to live. Of course, the excitement is that we've already got the rock. We already know we can stand like a rock. That is what makes it exciting. Definitely we can stand strongly and help other people to do the same. Nothing need rock us. No happening if we're standing strongly with our practice to the Gohonzon, no matter what may happen. So here's to the future, I say. All right, Bill?
How to make use of freedom. How can we create ideal human beings through democracy? Regarding this point, democracy in the end becomes a question of the profundity of the culture of a country. Wherever the ideal of democracy is weak in the traditional culture, freedom may cause disorder and therefore chaos, or it may be misused so as to restore the old regime. There are many examples of societies which have declined in these ways. For example, the success or failure of the Reformation term perestroika depends on whether the USSR can create the basis of democracy in the fields of culture and society. In this respect, President Gorbachev has the correct insight and understanding, and he is giving great attention to culture. Mainland China is a similar case. Lu Xun, who lived from 1881 to 1936, wrote, "There have only been two paths in history in China. In other words, periods of peace, which were the times when people were slaves, and periods of conflict, when people could not even be slaves." Prime Minister Zhou Enlai and all the other people who devoted themselves to creating the foundation of the present China gave their lives in order to create a country in which the people were paramount, by destroying those traditions which were against democratic principles.
Thank you. So I think this is a very important point here. This matter of creating democracy in the fields of culture and society. Culture, in what, particularly, of course, in terms of the arts, has an ability, if it is great art, to refine and purify the hearts of human beings. This is the importance of culture. If you look at a beautiful object of art, say like one of the amazingly beautiful Japanese things that were brought over when Sensei was here in 1989, if you look at one of these items, somehow the craftsman who made that beautiful thing can convey a message to you. It can go right deep into one's heart. I'm sure you all can relate to that. Or you can listen to a wonderful piece of music, and it can completely transform your state of life, perhaps. Or you go to the theatre and see a really great play, or to the ballet. It doesn't matter what aspect. You can read a great piece of literature, even a dialogue between you and someone else. If it's trying to create some sort of value for each other, can be inspiring in the same way. Or you can go out and see a beautiful garden, and it can fill your whole soul, or whatever you want to call it, with something amazing. So what we're really saying is that culture, great culture, can actually refine and purify people's lives. So this is why, of course, Sensei has concentrated so much on the cultural aspect. And indeed, it's why, in his vision of the future, he began many years ago to call our movement the Movement for Culture, Education and Peace, though none of us really understood it at that time. Culture develops sensitivity in a human being, doesn't it? Appreciation of life and of the wonderful things that human beings can do, rather than dwelling all the time on the awful things they can do. When Sensei wrote that poem for the United Kingdom in 1987, some people were so furious about it. because Sensei dwelt on the good points of the British people. Some of our members were absolutely furious. They thought he was telling fairy tales. He wasn't. We all know the bad points. He was saying, these are the great points in your history. Please develop them. And the bad points will then look after themselves. So to appreciate culture is a great step, I think, isn't it, for human beings? It's interesting that where you find oppression, dictatorship, rule through fear, you find culture is at a very poor level, always. So culture plays a great part, therefore, in developing the democratic spirit. I just want you to read, although probably you've read it before, but when Sensei gave his lecture on art and spirituality in the East and West in Paris, after he'd left this country in June last year, he gave this lecture at the Institut de France, and he started and ended it with a poem. I just asked Bill, off the cuff, I didn't warn him he got to do it, sorry Bill, but if you could just read this poem, it really sums up what we're saying about culture.
Art, O eternal light, imperishable imprint of civilizations, hymn to life, to liberty, to creation, to joy, intense prayer, profound harmony with the fundamental reality, forum of friendship where millions of beings join with greet and smile at each other. A man of letters declared in the West, East is East and West is West, but when the two giants meet, boundaries and nationalities will disappear. At the same time in the East, a great poet wrote, East and West must marry on the altar of humanity. And here is art, inviting the soul by reaching her hand out toward a soothing and serene wood, toward a garden where imagination blazes across the sky, inviting it to the noble stage of wisdom and leading it toward the far-off horizon of universal civilization.
Thank you. Really sums up, I think, what we're trying to say. You can tell Bill was an actor once, can't you? Okay, let's go on.
At any rate, in the process of establishing democracy, we have seen a tendency to alternate unstably between a situation of chaotic disorder and attempts to restore the old regime in which the people must blindly follow authority. These two situations are like the two sides of a coin, both of which have similar weaknesses. On one side, the people are unable to stand independently. On the other, they have no autonomy. In other words, true freedom has not yet been cultivated as fertile ground where human beings can grow and stand strongly. I want you all to engrave these warnings from history in your hearts and lead the movement of Causton in the future for the sake of Japan as well as the world, without misunderstanding these points.
So, Sensei's warning, just to repeat it, that true freedom has not yet been cultivated as fertile ground where human beings can grow and stand strongly. So we can't create this true democracy overnight, in other words. We have to go through a period when we do our human revolution and we provide the fertile ground for others to do the human revolution. First, of course, to our young people in sgi-uk, and then more and more going outwards to other people and giving them that fertile ground in which they can develop a whole new view of life. So if we are really to be like rocks in the society of the future, it's very important, of course, that sgi-uk itself And not just NSUK, of course, now. Sensei is thinking of every Nichiren Shoshu Sokogakai organization throughout the world, in all those areas, amongst all those people who are practicing. We have to develop our own clear understanding and put into action a true democracy ourselves, as well as struggling with our own inner life to learn to tolerate the differences above all things that we see in others. And it is a battle. We battle with the devil in our minds in front of the gonzan. I don't want to see that person's bad points anymore. I'm fed up with criticizing him. I must see his good points. If one desires so strongly to see his good points, or her good points, definitely you'll see them, because they must be there. So really, in truth, the world has never known freedom. If you look back over history, always, even from the time of Adam and Eve, they had God looking over them, taking them to task and putting them in a corner for being naughty. It's probably quite an enjoyable bit of naughtiness, but always there's been something, hasn't there? God or Allah or Yahweh, governments, dictators, popes, religious leaders, always dominating the people. Extraordinary, really, the history of it. So now the time is coming. Sensei is calling this period ahead the age of democracy. We are seeing the voice of the people winning a great battle in Eastern Europe and in Russia. They've got a long, long way to go yet, but nevertheless they've won that first round. The proof that even dictatorships, even oppressive regimes cannot resist the voice of the people in the end. We've seen in China the old regime trying to hold onto their position, desperately struggling. But I'm sure in their hearts they must know it's not going to last very much longer. You can't stop it now. The time has come in the history of the world, in the development of civilizations. So we have to make ourselves strong enough and wise enough to create the best way to run our countries and to rule ourselves. Okay?
Due to a lack of time today, I'm afraid I cannot talk to you in more detail about these great democratic personalities. However, I would like to remind you that various speeches I have made about the concept of leadership have been based on such great people. At this point, I'd like to mention one matter which is relevant to all I've been saying. It is a human virtue to be able to listen carefully to the opinions of others. If you do not make the effort to listen to the opinions of others, it's inevitable that you will fall into a condition of self-righteousness and begin to dictate to others. Then you will fail to be a democratic human being and will instead become an authoritarian one. Leaders of any kind must especially keep in mind the desire to overcome such conceited arrogance. Walt Whitman viewed and respected Lincoln as the captain of the ship of democracy. Lincoln made superhuman efforts and yet continued to listen with great patience to people's opinions and requests, opening up the White House to them so that they could do so. Of course, due to changing times and circumstances, it's sometimes impossible to apply this principle to everything. Also, in some cases, it may not be valuable to do so. However, you should never lose this spirit of listening to the opinions of others. Interpreting the term great democratic personalities from the viewpoint of a person who practices Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, I would describe it as a state of life in which one treasures and respects the children of the Buddha from the bottom of one's heart. Those who embrace the true law are indeed limitlessly precious people.
It's very beautiful, isn't it? And it's interesting that Sensei, in the end, this is the transmission part of this teaching. In the end, he picks on this one key point of listening carefully to the opinions of others. It is the same thing, tolerating the differences in the Kansai spirit, the spirit of Nichiren Daishonin. Listening, that means dialogue and discussion. So we've got to learn to listen to each other. And it's no good us pretending that we do that necessarily all the time at the moment. Men must listen to women. Women, equally, must listen to men. Older people must listen to younger people. Younger people must listen to older people, isn't it? We must listen to people of other races and backgrounds, just the same as we hope they will listen to us. We can give so much to each other as human beings if we can learn to listen. It's fundamental, isn't it? And this, I stress again, is the uniqueness of the discussion meeting. There we are in that room full of people we wouldn't normally be with. It compels us to learn to listen. It reminds us that what we've been doing all this afternoon at that discussion meeting was having a look round and criticizing everyone and saying, oh, I like that one, and that fellow's talking absolute nonsense. That sort of a thing. We have to learn to do the human revolution in the discussion meeting. This is its uniqueness. And if people fail to go to discussion meetings, then they are failing to do their human revolution, and I would say they're cowards. In the end, they're cowards, because they're being defeated by the devilish force of lie. There's so much to learn from discussion meetings. So this is, I think, the first guidance that we've had for the new era. And I guess it's a very exciting one, and I hope you feel the same as I do about it. And thanks for listening patiently. Many thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks very much.